Mute. minutes.
We're in the last 30 seconds.
Right, are we ready and seconds?
Slight close applause.
We better wait because we're not actually.
Oh, well,
Yeah, Is it?
Are we
Sure it's all? Yes, that's it.
action, right. Good evening and welcome to this edition of Sandwich Tollbridge Fund Museum and Archive Committee. I've been asked by Councillor Carter to stand in because he has other business and is stuck in London at the moment. So, item 1, apologies for absence received. Obviously, Councillor Carter. Is there anybody else who should be?
Yes. So the Mayor has a travel commitment, Councillor Franklin has a personal commitment, and Councillor Morehouse has a DDC commitment.
Thank you. Number 2, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. We don't seem to have any, so we move on from there. Number 3, public participation. I don't see any public, but I will just read the first part of this. 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda. Individual representations should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic to be addressed, must be given to the town clerk at least 4 hours in advance. Number 4, minutes of the Museum and Archive Committee meeting. Members to receive and approve minutes from the Museum and Archive meeting which took place on the 23rd of October 2024. A decision is required. Can we vote on this?
Yeah, good question.
Yes, of course.
Ken 24/7 podcast. We said, that this was something that we wanted to do, but are there any cost implications for this? The reason I asked the question is that we were asked on Monday for another organisation of a podcast, and the cost was pretty high. We turned that one down, but I'm just wondering, are there significant costs attached to this?
No, at the moment we are. We haven't really spent any money on it, so we have volunteers working on it with me, so it needs some of my time to see their time as well. Some of the episodes that we have in mind might be over Zoom, and you can record that. There's just software, you can just record it, so that's not going to cost anything. And then we thought through some different options for how we would, because we were originally going to record it at the university, so we were going to use their equipment, and it's changed slightly now. But actually, so it was the town council purchased something for a different event that they might have been used for the lapel microphones that the council has, and that. The piece of equipment actually didn't do the job it needed to do, but it was still here. And then we have since, so the museum has kind of purchased it off of the town council, which cost about £30, if that. So we think that will actually be the piece of equipment we can use just to capture the speech from the microphones.
Yes.
Into probably a phone or a laptop. We haven't properly tested it yet, but that's the kind of plan.
And have you got a platform that you're going to put it on? Because obviously there's many podcast platforms out there.
So you can make a profile on Spotify and just just do that, and we'll try it for Apple Podcasts as well. And I was hoping to upload the audio there probably won't be any video, there might be some images, to YouTube as a kind of, just to start building a bit of presence from the museum there as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I was going to bring up a question as a podcast project that I see anyway, it's noted in further on down,
Yeah.
something. And also the museum website, but I believe that's also, you answered my questions anyway about that further on down.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, we're just going to ask what the proposed podcast content will be.
So I think that this report did have some different rough ideas of what the topics would be. So we're aiming for a combination of key items in the collection, like Magna Carta, obviously, to make people interested, and then items from the collection store that aren't usually displayed or explored. So as an example, we have some interesting documents from a court case, which details a lot of information. And so we've been exploring that story. And then some other things in relation to questions that visitors ask. So for example, lots of people ask about the rat. So we've been working on exploring that story, the story that we tell, and whether or not different parts of it are completely true in some areas, and kind of exploring those different things. So it's a combination, and we're hoping to see how it goes. And then if there is a second season, we have been thinking about people maybe within the town that are experts on specific areas of history that might want to come and talk about those things, people from the History Society, maybe even some other museums.
So presumably, you can update and change the agenda on this podcast as time goes on.
Yeah, so we have got a rough idea of the episodes, but we sort of are, obviously we're just getting back into things after Christmas, so, and sort of just getting organised. You'll see later on it says the dates have moved slightly. So meeting a volunteer that's working on this, we've just been figuring those things out, but there probably could be quite a detailed update on the April agenda, because we won't have recorded by then anyway, so I can provide that then, if not at the March extraordinary meeting, if depending on workload for accreditation.
Well, what I meant was that you can change over the course of time stuff that you put on the podcast.
No, what is in once it's recorded, or
Yeah,
how do you mean?
Yeah, put in a different story, if you like, change stories or something.
So,
like that.
well, what it will be is there'll be a set number of episodes with there will all be a specific story, and then that will be it, and then there'll be another. Yeah, but we're hoping to put, there'll be hopefully transcriptions of the episodes and all the sources that we've used for the research on our website, so people can get hold of that. And we're also, as part of it, hoping that people will engage with us. So we're asking for feedback. So we're not saying that we know everything about these topics, we're saying we've done, we're telling these stories, and if someone has more interesting things to add, then they can. And we're hoping to fit in an episode which is a feedback episode, where we talk through things that people have highlighted or even corrected us on. Maybe we're sort of being open to those things. Hopefully build a community.
So it's not just a one-off.
Hopefully not, no.
And so that close the door now.
Yes,
We have any public participation.
They can't say anything now anyway. Right, are we okay? Anything else on the minutes? Can we take a vote on the minutes? Let's see, we have
Councillor Ripley propose.
propose and a second, Councillor Fortescue and a vote.
Thank you very much.
And we can move on to number 5, Update on museum operations. Members to receive an update on museum operations. Over to you.
So this is, I feel like a slightly shorter version maybe of what I would usually produce, partly again because of presentation. Most of the main information is there. So the visitor figures, I was quite ambitious with what we could reach this year, slightly too ambitious, but we have exceeded at this, so based on the financial year this is, we've exceeded last year's total already, so we will be higher than that. So I'm hoping we can get to 13,000 visitors this financial year. I put in the graph, which you did see last time, and we've seen in the user development plan, but because we've now done 2024, I can add in that full year, so you can see how the figures are growing. I think we're getting to the point where it's going to be quite difficult to keep increasing them. But we are obviously exploring different areas of work. I think the digital work, one of the reasons for doing that podcast and various other things, a website as well, is that we can reach outside of the physical space and hopefully reach some people in different ways and get them interested. So hopefully those things will work. Obviously temporary exhibitions is again something, but I'll let that later on. Donations of income. We have an increase compared to last year so far, so that's good. We do actually have a budget for this year, which the committee I think hasn't actually seen. It's my first, so the museum didn't really have a breakdown of its budget previously. So this is the first financial year that we have had something like that. So I'm still getting to grips with it slightly. But that seems to be going okay. And the finance officer did recently have a look at it and say that we're actually on track in terms of what we predicted we would make and spend. So we have to produce a budget for accreditation anyway. So in April we will get the proper budget, and then ideally I think I will provide a version of it or kind of income and expenditure information as part of the update in future meetings. So that's just to give you an idea that we're doing okay. Interestingly, I think the donations are potentially slightly lower than I thought they'd be, but the shop income is slightly higher. So it seems like those projects that we sort of started in terms of merchandise is making a difference. Social media figures, it's the same situation. The more capacity there is to produce posts and content, usually the higher the figures are. There are quite a few bits of marketing that I need to be doing over the next few months, so hopefully that won't have an impact. And I talked about exploring platforms, I think in the last meeting or before that, in relation to the museum's tone of voice and there's quite a casual, informal, kind of humorous tone that quite a lot of companies and museums have, and it wasn't something that we had, and I was aware of kind of putting people off by suddenly changing how we sound, but a new platform suddenly developed, and a lot of people moved from Twitter to Blue Sky, and I went to have a look at it and then noticed there weren't many museums there, and I thought, well, perhaps we should get on there sooner rather than later. So we did done that, and so I put a little breakdown of our followers just to give you an idea of when we joined the platform and what our followers are. And so I wrote November. So as of November 20, so we started November 24, and so when I wrote this report, so earlier this month, we were close to what our Facebook followers were. We're actually over that now. So we're at 1,315 people following us on that platform. So it seems like quite a good place. We seem to have a lot more interactions, and I think we've sort of had interactions with other organisations and things like that, which is really nice as well. So I think that's a positive thing. A couple of details about research inquiries there. We haven't had a huge amount, but there's a couple of different ones there. The volunteers are, so we were at capacity. We're now not, because one volunteer was going to be leaving at some point and has now told me that date basically has arrived. So we have one regular shift to fill, which means it says 32 volunteers, we technically have 31 volunteers. I'm trying to expand the ad hoc team so that they can have the calendar first and fill in the gaps to kind of take some pressure off of the regular volunteering team, because I find that sometimes someone who, so for example, we have someone that does 2 shifts, so 2 days in a row basically, and then we'll offer to do another one, and then it's doing 3 shifts in a row, which is fine if they're happy to do that, but then it means obviously perhaps we have a team of people that aren't necessarily filling in those gaps. So I'm trying to slightly make that change, which I've tried to this in for February, and I need to have a little think about that process because I don't feel like it has been as effective as I wanted it to. So I'll try again for March. The collections management work is going well. We have documented over 10,000 items. And the reference library I haven't got on here because it's not progressing in the same way, but we've done 1,200 items, so slightly more than we had last time.
So, with the inventory, how many more items do you think need to be
So the
recorded and repacked and removed and so on?
So just for listing them, not the repacking process or anything like that, literally just listing them with a location ideally, and making sure they're numbered. The timeline for how long that will take is based on a collection of 20,000 items.
So we're about 50%.
Yes, but what I'll say is that the various old versions of lists that didn't have the information in them, which is why we're doing it like from scratch basically. They total about 16,000 items roughly, but then it's whether there's duplicates across them because they're all in different places, or whether they're not actually separated out the way we would expect them to be. So I've looked at that figure, and then I've kind of gone for 20,000 from what I observed. So it may be that we reach that figure sooner. When I recalculated where we were, the timeline actually shortened slightly, but I've said, I think it was December 2027 we would finish. It's actually, more, if you do the calculation, it's actually earlier than that, I left it as that date.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Black.
Yeah, just for the record, I think it's extremely good that the visitor numbers have increased actually by 24%, which is pretty good going. And the other thing is that the revenues have increased by 11%. I think it's important that people outside this room know that these things are working and are working well.
Yeah.
I do have I hadn't come across Blue Sky before, and you seem to have got a large number of members. Is this a platform that really is increasing very much because X is not very popular at the moment, shall we say, for many reasons.
It is partly that. I think the way it's been created probably adds to it, although I'm not hugely knowledgeable on that. And also they have a system of, which I think I might have mentioned in here,
Interaction.
listings of
Oh.
places. So we joined quite quickly, and you can make a list of types of account basically. So they made a list of UK museums, which we got added to. And what that means is if someone new joins and they're looking for museums, they can click follow everyone in this list. And that's why we're getting followers, because people are migrating over and finding us through that. Yeah, so it's good.
Excellent. Could I ask just one last question then? The anniversary of VE Day, I thought Leave to Land was going to come in, and I don't see it mentioned here.
Yeah, I'll work through these points and then we'll get to the
My apologies.
further down.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the podcast project we talked about, it's been pushed back slightly, but I think that might be quite a good thing, because the episode, ideally the release dates will actually be when we are coming out of our peak season. So it's another way for people to engage with the museum and maybe come and visit us, even though it's sort of slightly outside of summer. So that will be more towards September. So that's kind of just the main update for that. And we're figuring out those dates, reviewing them, and getting episodes written and planned. What else? That's kind of where we're at with that. And then there's sort of, once we figured out those dates, working backwards, working out marketing. That's where we've got to. The museum website, so it needs to be published at the end of February, because our subscription for the current site will renew. We don't want to pay for another year. So I had a plan. Originally, it was going to be pretty similar to the current site, or similar information for now, because it's bound. Except I've already expanded it, because there's lots of information that should be on there. So I have done that, but there were more things that I wanted to add to it that I'm now, because of accreditation again, not going to. They won't be published when the website's published, but they're my plans for what will happen.
Just on the museum website, we've got Dover District Council doing the various plaques which are going to go around town.
Yeah.
And of course, at the background of that, there's a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they're going to also make that available online. Are we going to link from the website, possibly not immediately, so that we're not duplicating? So that, for example, if there's something on, as was mentioned at the STC meeting, United Reformed Church, if there's a reference to United Reformed Church on the museum website, it can link directly to that. So basically, save you time.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, definitely. To add to this as well, Councillor Black raised the query of the URL. We have changed the URL.
Oh, good, yeah.
It will be .org.uk.
Right.
What we're going to do, so the museum leaflet needs to be updated. There's outdated information on it anyway. So my plan is to pay for the current URL for another year, which is not very expensive. It's like £10 or something, and redirect it to the new URL. So if anyone searches that, they're going to go to the new website, and then that should give us time to use up our leaflets and then redesign them. Yes, so there's a nice tool that I have discovered where we can kind of make a timeline on the website, which then can link to different areas of history. And then I have been exploring it's almost like the architecture of how we have collections on there, but then we connect them to other related items. Or pieces of history that we want to talk about, or we might have a specific, I don't know, World War One item, and then actually there's another collection item that would be, that's related to that would be interesting, and just how they all connect together. So that is something I've been in the process of, but now can be delayed because it won't be published within the first time the website's published. So we'll, I think, basically launch these extra things further down the line. I would really like it to have a blog, so that would also be there. And then other resources that are helpful for people. So hopefully there'll be more information on there for people researching, doing research inquiries and things like that. Yeah, that's the current plan, but it can, it's being on the new platform, there's room for us to expand it, which is the key thing. Tony exhibitions, I haven't got a plan in here because of not necessarily having the space available. We're focusing on what the museum does in terms of its digital output, which I think is a good, it should be done. So we're working on that. I don't have capacity to plan an exhibition if I don't have a room to put it in. So that's the situation with them. The accreditation, they do ask in the list for exhibitions and kind of events and these kind of things. So I do have a list of ideas, and I will be putting together some thoughts for that.
I think with regard to Councillor Black's comment about Leave to Land, we're hoping to have it available to us during the period, roughly the 1st of May through to about the 10th, 12th of May. And the intention would be to have it in the courtroom, much as we had it before. But I would imagine that we won't take your time in doing it. I think we'll just basically receive it, set it up, and it hopefully will bring people through the museum as well. So, and it will be actively published as part of the BE Day event. So it has a double whammy for the museum. And Councillor Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Simon. Yes, I was, well, a number of concerns. First of all, is the courtroom available then? I mean, people get married in May.
Yes, that's what I was going
Yes.
to raise. I'll do is check the calendar. And obviously, if the courtroom isn't available because there is a wedding or something happening, we could potentially have it in another room of the building. But what we will need to concern ourselves with is there will need to be people on hand to look after it, because that is the whole problem that we faced last time. It does need to have people present, a presence there in case something happens. It has to be insured as well, so that will have to come from the budget that you set aside.
We're looking at a way of making it more robust with regard to insurance and ownership.
Okay.
Which we'll be able to tell you a bit more once we know that we can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, because when it came last time, they insisted on us having adequate insurance, which did cost money.
Well, when you say that, sorry to interrupt you, Jill, because I spent a lot of time.
Yes.
And I was there sleeping. I did inquire about their demands about insurance, and they said they didn't have any, but they presumed that when you were talking about insurance, you were talking about insurance with the people who transported it.
No, but I was told that the insurance had to be for the actual the exhibition, because they were,
Well, the persons I've been talking to didn't seem to think that was necessary. And also, that, as I understand it, I think this is what Simon is cryptically referring to.
Yes.
This is what happens when it's shown in the United States. They just print it off.
right.
Yeah.
So that's what we wondered, whether we could not have a permanent held copy here.
Yes.
So we could just show it when we want to show it.
Yes.
Well, yeah, if you wanted to make inquiries, that's a possibility.
Yeah. Which would probably cost about the same as the cost of the insurance.
Yeah.
I don't think that printing is that expensive, but anyway,
Yeah.
I'll go to find out.
Thank you. So I'll leave that to you and Councillor Mallet.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is ongoing, certainly.
Okay, thank
Then
you.
I have another point to make in relation to, you say a special podcast episode in relation to the kitchen account, with the editor of the kitchen account website. So have you been in touch with Claire Weisenberg? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, good. And what has she said?
She is, so I spoke to her before Christmas, and she was quite happy to be involved, and I have just sent an email to give her an update of how we have the kind of the process to make sure data-wise we can find a date that works. So yeah, that's that kind of plan. So in terms of the timing, obviously I said that the podcast had moved, but that will be released at the moment I put on the day, but around that time. But I think probably, I'm not sure yet, we'll decide how we want to, whether we want to announce that we have the podcast coming then, or whether we want to release it as something we're doing for VE Day and then later on say that we have, you know, a full season, hopefully. I would have to discuss that with those involved in the project. But yeah, she's on board. So
Because Simon's been talking to me about giving a talk.
Yes,
So, I mean, that's what we're good, you know.
you need to establish where and what day. I was thinking, I've got ideas in my head which I need to, how it will fit in with other things going on. And also, we had to pass on with the various plans for the museum's events during the anniversary, is that as you firm up when, we can fit them into one booklet, just a couple of A4 sheets folded, covering everything that Sandwich is doing over that period. So rather than, there's a brochure from the museum, a brochure from Sandwich Salutes, so it's all together with maybe 2,000 or 3,000 copies, because that's what I normally print for Salutes. And it reads through the whole week. And I think it will benefit, well, it'll be a mutual benefit for all the organisations.
So we did the art exhibition last year. There was just a note here. Again, there's a slight worry about capacity, but I think I still would like to do that. And so it makes sense to me that it's relevant again to the anniversary of the VE Day. So I am not exactly sure what the object would be, because it's kind of the idea is a focus from something from the collection that people can think about and explore and produce a piece of work in relation to that we then display. So it won't be around the time of VE Day, but I think it would make sense to explore that. So I put down, so we do have a copy in the collection that's clay and it is made by the infant school. But I might have a look at other items that are working, or I might think of a different idea, but at the moment that's a thought.
Keep the ideas coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I put potential things, so obviously, I put the art exhibition down under the VE Day plans and the podcast episode. There's a few potential ideas, so I did mention a talk, I'm not really sure, but I have a volunteer who's doing lots of research into the Second World War, people related to the Second World War from Sandwich. So I didn't know if there were any stories there that might be interesting. Again, the website will be published by then, so it might be nice to feature some items from the collection in a sort of online exhibition. We might even manage to have a cabinet with them in. And then there's a couple of other thoughts. So there was a World War I project a few years ago that was externally funded, and they produced a book that has calligraphy writing of all the names of the people. It's got lots of details in it, and depending on where this Second World War research is at, I wondered whether we should commission a book for a Second World War as well, and see if we can get that calligraphy, the same version basically, because the first one was First World War. So I thought that would makes sense for this anniversary. I need to explore that further, because then they can be displayed together. They usually the First World War one is displayed in the cabinet in the courtroom. So I thought that made sense. And then I've just been discussing today, so it's not mentioned on here. I'm exploring ideas of community projects, something perhaps where people can write a name or a memory on something, probably a poppy or a piece of a poppy or something, that we then turn into perhaps a wreath or something that goes into the museum collection. So it's kind of like contemporary collecting, people reflecting on the 80th anniversary, and then we then keep that and preserve it in the collection. But we talked about it earlier, but I'm still considering that. I like the idea of it. I need to think about how that would work. Different ideas of things that we can do.
I was just going to say there was somebody who lives in Sandwich who writes a wonderful poetry about
What about school participation in some of these things?
Yes, yeah. So the idea of making or collecting memories and things like that, we did think about schools being involved, because we talked about whether there could be a part of it where people can just write memories and things, but perhaps people might want to actually make a poppy, because we were just talking about people that crochet different things and or knit things, whether they would like to make a poppy, maybe the size of the standard poppy that you wear, that they could submit, and then we could turn them all into something, maybe something in the shape of 80 or something like that, again, that we keep for the collection. So,
Yes.
Yes, because we did talk about intergenerational work as well, didn't we, in this day? So, yeah, the idea being, you have maybe people from age concern and school children working together.
Yes.
It's very good.
Sounds good. But the poppy was really the First World War, isn't it? Yeah, I was just thinking what would be the equivalent for the Second World War.
Yes. Well, the poppy is also the remembrance focused on the 11th. The end of the war is, it's over.
Yeah,
That's, I think that personally,
well, that was BE Day,
Yes.
it wasn't BJ Day.
yes. You mentioned BJ Day. Woodensborough, we had our Woodensborough Parish Council meeting last night, and we're sort of still talking about whether and what the BE Day event will be, but we're also thinking about whether to fix everything on the BJ Day, because everybody's going to be doing BE. Not many people do BJ, so it might be that Woodensborough goes more towards
There
celebrating
was that,
BJ.
the terrifying end to that bit of the war.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I still think most people associate poppies with remembering of the war, whether it's First World War or the Second World War. So I don't really think.
You don't get that.
No, I don't.
Well, it's meant to commemorate fallen
Yeah,
of
of war.
all since 1914-18, isn't it? Because there's a whole thing, it's the Korean War, there's places like Afghanistan and so on. So I agree, it came out of the First World War, but I think it's very much they're trying to commemorate. And if you look at the British Legion, it's not just that now, it's specifically all of the.
Right. If we can move on, because we've got an awful. Yeah, through. Right, we've got a couple of more things for you to just.
Yeah,
Briefly
so
cover.
it's just to note, just to give you an idea of the ongoing projects, really. And so I just noted
Yes.
those down.
Very interesting, because obviously it's generated a lot of discussion on this, which is good.
So it's just asking the committee to receive them and stuff.
Yes, can we receive, can I have a proposer to receive? I know councillor Ripley had her card up first. But you can second it. So proposed by councillor Ripley, seconded by councillor Black, and I think we're all agreed.
Bit of a post.
Yes. And if we're going to move on to update on the done that. Number 6, accreditation return. Members to receive a report regarding the museum's accreditation return, attachments 3 and 3A.
Yeah, so basically, the committee, most members know, that we have been asked to submit our accreditation return. It's due on the 1st of July. The current timeline is there are all of the policies on this agenda, and most of the plans are written, the plans are written, which they have been approved, but there's been some adjustments, mostly to the timing, because of while I was making the forward plan. So we have an extraordinary meeting on the 7th of March to, the plan is to get the rest of the documentation on the agenda and hopefully recommend it to the trustee. Then all of it will go to the trustee at the end of March. And then there are final documents that need to be in place that don't necessarily need to be approved. I'll double check that one. They just need to be available. And then I'm hoping to submit the application in late April. I'm wary of mayor making in March and just changes to members on committees and things like that, and whether that will cause any delays.
Okay.
No, sorry. Sorry, yeah, so I'm hoping to as soon as STBF will approve it in, that's throwing me now, I can't remember, end of March, and then,
Cough.
Oh, no,
I've just got a couple of queries, Millie. 9.1, the additional mandatory documents for nationally style, which is,
that's not us.
oh, it's
We're not
not.
nationally start, we're not
Okay.
national.
Okay, so I was going to say, a couple of those we couldn't,
No, it's not, I could have,
okay.
I should have just skipped that page.
Okay. So that was an extra page on there.
Sorry.
Okay, so of course,
Yeah, so that's the timeline, and then I did note down the documents that are quite finished, which is just finishing up the forward plan and then budgets, and we are just asking questions about approval of accounts and audited accounts and how that works for our organisation because of this slightly different structure. Security risk assessment of anywhere there are collections. They like to know we have secure occupancy, which we do, we're covered really, so that's not a huge concern. The emergency plan, the documentation procedural manual, and then just some extra updates that go in the forward plan, basically. That's exhibition events and things, but that's fine. So those are the things that just need to be checked or finished, basically.
I think we're going to vote. Can we have a proposal to state that we received this? So we have Councillor Black will have your turn and Councillor Whitworth in second, but we're going to. I think it's a unanimous again.
yeah,
Right.
Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Now moving on to we've got. I'm going to say this is.
Sorry.
The numbering, list the number, it doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Governance documents, members to receive the updated governing documents for the museum, decision required.
So I will just, so there's a bit of information now about the governing documents, I won't go through it. It's the museum constitution, which is not one that's really been, I think, updated. Well, it hasn't been updated for a long time. And then the statement of purpose, which I've adjusted, it was approved, but I've adjusted it to include a section from the Constitution, which I think is kind of sets out the purpose in a better way. And then the volunteer agreement, which again, I think hasn't been seen by this committee, so it's just a few adjustments. And yeah, those are the three documents.
Right, are we happy with this? Councillor Fortescue?
Yes, I've, 4B, the updated statement of purpose.
Have we got,
Have
have we got?
you got that far yet?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes.
just ran through all three of them.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Right.
I just
Well,
4B.
Page 25.
I just wondered if the opening sentence might be phrased slightly differently. That's the Sandwich Guildhall Museum sits under the registered charity, etc. So my proposal is Sandwich Guildhall Museum was established in accordance with, and then you cite the 1754 Act. And that also applies to the opening
it was,
sentence of 5A, collections development policy.
it wasn't established in accordance with the Act. The Act is the legislation for the Tollbridge Fund, so I don't know if that is, but it's a version of that is
Yes,
fine.
it just strikes me that Sandwich Guildhall Museum sits under the registered charity. I think people might be
It's
a little puzzled.
it's an activity or an operation for the charity, and I think that makes more sense.
Updated
The
statement.
updated, under the updated section, so it's just this verse.
Oh, right, oh, okay,
But I think,
yes.
I think we could say it's an activity, or we could just say, explain Sandwich Tollbridge Fund, and then it goes on to say that in 1993 they resolved to form a museum with this purpose. So it just goes like that. I could just ignore what I said, change it to say that this is, the Tollbridge Fund is a registered charity, and this is the legislation.
Yeah.
Sorry, we'll go back. Can I go back to 4A? I've got a couple of questions on 4A. Looking at 4A6, which says that you may charge. First of all, for 6B, might it not be better just to move that to electronic media? Because obviously the technology is moving on, and that saves you saying, that it's out of date. But more interesting is 6D. A large number of the visitors, and you've referred to this as well, come from these language schools, but we get no revenue from them. Is this an area which this committee feels we should explore? Because basically this is part of their day out from Margate or Ramsgate. And whilst some of them are lovely people, can we get some cash from them?
I think this is something that will be explored is a kind of producing something that sets out some fees or this information. I have thought about producing a kind of almost like marketing, but that will refer to donations and things like that, to directly send to the people that visit. But I think one of the key things that is useful is requesting that they contact me beforehand, which helps it helps for the volunteers knowing, that there's a big group coming, and it also means I can then say, please bear in mind that while it's free to come in and kind of mention donations, because sometimes, if we have two groups of 30 people arriving at the same time, it's difficult. So that is usually the best thing, and they do usually contact me beforehand. But it's tricky. I think I think a lot of the groups that did visit, I did tell them that, but I think they sort of, it falls to the students to give a donation.
Okay, Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I was just going to say that the Association of Jewish Refugees comes every year. And I take them on the time and so on. But having consulted with Lily, I always tell them that the expectation is that each person coming will make a donation of at least £5. Now, they're grown-ups who come on the own, though they sometimes bring their grandchildren. But I think that works quite well, and I think that might be a way of, saying perhaps to these student groups, we expect each student, donate at least £1, if not
Yeah.
a bit more.
Councillor Black?
Yeah, back to 4A, section 4, disbandment. I was a little bit surprised that should it ever be disbanded, it goes to the town council and not to the Goldbridge Fund. In the event of the museum is disbanded, all funds, artifacts and materials, it seems slightly
It
odd.
means if I think what it should say is if the Goldbridge Fund,
I-
this is the,
It'd be helpful
yeah, that
if
point wasn't
you're able to
updated.
do that, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I've got my detail hat on
no,
today.
that's fine. A lot of the constitution hasn't been
Yeah,
changed.
fully understand.
But yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And
So,
4C,
governance documents, how we,
yeah.
Councillor Black?
If we look at 4C, the penultimate paragraph of all the signature, I'm glad that this is very specific. This is not an agreement of employment or contract for paid work. I think that's absolutely critical to have that there, and so well done for putting it in.
And are we okay with governance documents? If we can vote on this, can I have a proposer? Councillor Fortescue? And the
I'll second
seconder?
it.
Councillor Black? And if we can vote on this, Councillor?
Well, I'm just worrying about the volunteers.
Yes, okay.
I'm sorry to. Yes, so I just wanted to be certain that because we did pay a lot of attention to the policies of volunteers, that will there be something that they have to sign to indicate that they've actually read all these policies?
This is
This
the
is it,
agreement
yeah.
that
This
they would
is it.
sign,
Okay.
and they would get the volunteer policy with this,
Right.
and their role description. So they're asked to look through that before they sign it.
Okay, so that if they breach the volunteer policy, we've got something which we can say.
Yeah, we can just, we have a proposal and a seconder. We can vote it as unanimous.
Yes.
And we've done governance. Number 7, collections development policy. Members to receive the updated collections development policy for the museum. Decision required.
So this is, this policy's already been, it's already been received, and I think it was approved
Is there another?
previously. So I've just, again, for the purposes of accreditation, had a look through it and made some very minor changes. This is the one where most of it is set out by the Arts Council anyway.
Yeah.
And then just the change that will be made is the statement of purpose will be changed to match the statement of purpose that we've just approved. If it doesn't really, I think it probably is the same, that version, but I've just changed that sentence to the flagged, otherwise it's as it was.
Councillor Clark?
Yes, I've got a couple of questions here. Under section 4.1, I'm not sure I've come across this phrase before. The penultimate bullet point, born digital?
Yeah, so items that are originally digital in their format. Basically, so a video maybe, or something like that.
Thank you.
can deposit things like that.
Okay. Then I've got a couple of others further on. 10.1, human remains. Do we have any human remains? No. Right,
Yes,
okay.
that was one of the points that was amended, because I think it's we do.
I'm surprised we still have, but it's a very difficult one, clearly. And there was one other, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Right.
Sorry, can I
Oh,
just?
sorry.
Yeah. And I can't remember, I've got a note down here, but I can't remember which section it was, you said there with me if I've got this wrong. The holdings at Maidstone, do we have any details about exactly what they have got that belong to Sandwich?
So they're online, so they have an online catalogue. I don't know if that's everything they have, that you can search, and usually our items, they have the letters SA at the beginning of them, and they are part of our collection. There have been previous lists, obviously we should know, and we should have a list. But I need to, and I have spoken to them previously about this, but I would like to get hold of an up-to-date list, especially as I'm not sure how the process of the loan paperwork for that, because they were given to them, I think, before the museum existed, that as far as I understand it. So I don't know what the paperwork is, but it is supposed to be in place. And the Arts Council may well ask about that. So yes, I need to talk to them.
That would seem quite an important thing to me, that there's a lot of stuff that relates to Sandwich, belongs to Sandwich, that is there. But that it would be very interesting, I know we've discussed it before, to go and see whether what they've got, wouldn't it?
And Councillor Policy?
Yes, under Sandwich Guildhall Museum, and its collect, well, whatever. 4.1 on page 6. This is a very pedantic point, but I don't think you need an S at the end of the carte de visite. I think it's just B-I-S-I-T-E. That's the top of page 6. And on 5, if I can find it. Yes. With regard to I've got one. Yes, 5, the second paragraph. When a full inventory. I just thought that the last sentence might be phrased slightly differently. And my suggestion is to determine or decide those which are part of the museum's collection and accessioned as such, and those which are not within the museum's collection criteria.
Okay. Sorry, could you?
That's at the bottom of page 6.
Could you repeat the wording?
Well, it's just a suggestion, either to determine or to decide those which are part of the museum's collection and accessioned as such, and those which are not within the museum's collection criteria.
Well, I'm reading this as it's both those which are in the collection and those which are within the museum but not part of the collection, and both are to be treated in the same way.
So to decipher which are part of the museum's collection and accessioned as such, so accessioned items that are they're accessioned into the museum's collection. Really, it doesn't need to say. It could just say which are accessioned, and which are not part of the collection, or like which are not accessioned, and then which ones also don't fit the criteria. So it's basically there's 3 different things there. I think so. Yeah, to determine.
That's a better way than decipher.
Yeah, that's fine. To determine which are accessioned, which are accessioned, which are not part of the collection, and which ones don't, and which don't fit the do not fit the policy the criteria, sorry, something to that effect, that's fine.
And I've got another suggestion, I'm afraid. Under 9.1, that's page 8, I think. Yes, just the opening sentence. I think it could be stated more economically, perhaps. Decisions regarding acquisitions are the responsibility of the museum manager. That's the opening sentence. Decisions regarding acquisitions are the responsibility of the museum manager.
But then it says acquisitions that are purchased require approval from the governing body.
Yeah, it's,
So you have to mention variation, request or transfer.
yeah, that's, it's, there's,
Well,
yeah,
it then goes on to say, which, when the item is being acquired by donation, request or transfer.
I think that's fine, yeah, I think that makes sense, the change that you suggested.
Okay.
And any other comments on the collections development policy? We can move forward on this. Can I have somebody to propose? Councillor Black. Oh, can I? And second. Councillor Black is just put it to the post. Councillor Anderson has seconded it.
This doesn't happen in SDCs.
And can we have a vote on this? And she's carried unanimously. So, collections number 8, collections documentation policy. Members to receive the updated collections documentation policy for the museum, decision required.
Again, this, the committee's already seen this, document, I just got through it and I think that it's some extra bits of information. I think there might be, I had a, I was dealing with, the process of returning items, which I think is in here, if they are, unsolicited donations, might have been the main update. But again, like I said, I've just checked through it, again and made some minor alterations, so it's pretty much the same as it was before.
Do we have any comments on the collections documentation policy?
I've got another characteristically pedantic point. Under 10.1,
Yeah.
I think it should be criteria
Okay.
rather than criterion.
Yeah.
And under 13, I think it might be expressed slightly differently. A museum must know at any time exactly what it is legally responsible for, and then a full stop. This includes loans and permanent collections and the location of each item.
So I'm
Yeah,
yours.
that's fine. Yeah.
And I think that under an inventory, just following, I don't think you need an of there. There's an of, be specified noted.
Sorry, could you just point out where that was again? I missed
6A.
6A, no,
No,
just within the document,
Yes,
what did you say?
Are we there?
Yes, it's under 13.
14.
13,
Accountability.
accountability.
inventory of somewhere, but I don't know. But I can,
And Richie record including the location in the object.
no, I mean,
Number.
It doesn't really matter.
Can I just ask what policy is as far as unsolicited actions is concerned?
let me have a look and see where it was.
It does say so.
Yeah, because I went through it and I added a section and then I realised that it kind of, we had already covered it. So if I just, I'm going to see if I can find it. There's multiple sections that it can go under. So we need to check. Oh, here we go. So if the museum chooses not to keep an object, it should be returned to the depositor. If the owner is not contactable, the museum will make reasonable attempts to return the object, possibly including securely posting it. However, if that is not possible, the governing body reserves the right to approve of the object disposal after 4 months of the expected return date. So we would do the paperwork that says we're expecting to return this to you, or this was brought in and we can't get hold of you, and it would be 4 months after that date. I would make my best attempts to contact that person, and then the committee or the trustee would make a decision about how we deal with that. And there is some really helpful guidance on that, which I've been looking at.
Because there will be bequests, people will leave stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always in the interest of the museum, obviously, to be open, as it were, because then people have a sense that they can leave things, and the museum will indeed look after their items and possibly display them. So you need to keep on the right side of people who are going to really request.
Yeah,
So it's quite a tricky issue.
I think, again, the key to it is making sure the information is available on the website. So obviously we'll have that information. We do now anyway about object donations, but we can have information about if you are thinking of leaving us something in a will, please have a conversation with us about it, because we have a criteria. And if something falls outside that criteria, then we can't collect it. So I think, again, it's making sure people understand that. This really is, it's sort of, if someone gives us something and then actually it's not something that we would need to keep or want to keep. And there's also, so we would refer to the guidance because disposing of objects you may not own to deal with unsolicited and unwanted donations. So that's if someone, which does happen, someone says, for example, posts something to us that says, we thought you might want this, and they don't tell me because I have to sign a piece of paper, they don't tell me anything about who they are, where they're from, then we would refer to this guidance basically to decide how we deal with that. And I would ask the committee, I would recommend a decision and say, I think we should do this probably. In that situation, it's quite difficult because we're not supposed to dispose of things as in throw them away. But if someone posts something and says, if you don't want it, throw it away, we are allowed to. And so it's just, again, it's making sure the information's on the website and that all the staff and volunteers know. So I do sort of try, and that isn't something to make sure that the information's available to people within the building, that if someone tries to leave something, don't let them leave it here, because there's paperwork to be done.
Councillor Pierce.
Yes, I've found you'll be delighted to learn. It's on page 7, 13.0, accountability. The first bullet point. And I think the last phrase, it should read, I think, and the date when this information was recorded, rather than and the date of when this information was recorded.
Shows you have to have the right mind, because I read that 3 times. Right, do we have any other, if I can have somebody to propose, councillor Ankerson, and to second.
Or if this is Councillor Black.
No, I'm done with it.
You've done your bit. I will get councillor Fortescue. And to read, that's unanimous. Right, we've done the collections development, collections documentation policy, and moving on to the access policy. So members to receive the updated access policy for the museum, a decision required.
Again, there might have been some adjustments. The main one with this was deciding the best way to lay it out, just because it's sort of access to the building, and the kind of things you would usually think of in relation to access, but it's actually also access to the collection. So again, this has already been approved, and I've just had a quick check through it, and I think mostly reformatted it, if anything.
Right, do we have any comments on this? If I can have somebody to propose, we have councillor Black, and to second this, councillor Ripley. And we vote on this, that is unanimous. And right, we're going to move on to collections, care and conservation policy. Members to receive the updated care and conservation policy for the museum, decision required. That is,
Yeah, exactly the same situation, just had to check through it.
right, do we have any, councillor Ripley?
I don't think this is something we can discuss in an open forum when we do a video, but it's about, security.
Right,
Agree.
So if we can somehow do this.
What I will say is we will have the care and conservation plan and planning documents that will need to be approved at the next meeting, and so we can, in relation to that, probably have a confidential item that talks about.
right. Okay, in respect of that, if we can just move straight on to proposing and seconding that we move forward on this, so we don't have to have a decision. If I can have a proposer, councillor Fortescue, a seconder, councillor Ripley, and again, I hope yes, we have unanimous. And we're moving on now to the recruitment procedures. Members to receive the museum's recruitment procedures, decision required.
This was mostly a case of writing down the kind of procedure that is followed at the moment, because it's not written down, and I don't think, I have not found a version of this written down for the volunteers in the museum, so I've just written it down how it is now, currently.
Right, councillor Black?
Yes, I've just got one question, which is 2 to 11. Are we requiring all volunteers to have a DBS check, or is this?
We don't require all volunteers to. So if, for example, we recruited to a specific learning role, then if it was a specific, those people would be required to, but the front of house volunteers aren't required to.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine.
Unless it's very specific.
Okay.
role.
Right, do you have any other comments on the recruitment policy? Can I have somebody propose, councillor Black, second, councillor Fortescue? And if we can vote on this, that is unanimous. Right, if we can have number 11, succession procedures. Members to receive the museum's succession procedures, decision required.
Again, I was having a look at the accreditation application, and they asked if we have these procedures in relation to the different roles within the organisation, and we don't really have anything written down. But I think the succession plan really is about the disbandment of STDF more than anything. So I thought it was useful to write some things down to help the museum continue operating in the event of losing various roles. So it does only cover, it doesn't cover, for example, re-employing, say if I chose not to work here anymore. It's not covering that. I suppose it might help with that, but it's more if there was an extended leave for some reason for a few months or something.
Councillor Ripley?
I think I understand what this is, but it's a mouthful, so I'm just checking it. Volunteer digital content assistant. Is that somebody doing this podcast?
Yes, yeah.
And any other comments? If we can move on to, can somebody propose this? That is the the succession procedure, Councillor Ripley, and second, Councillor Brack. And to vote on this, thank you very much. That is unanimous. And the next one is, we have a succession. Number 12, the access audit. Members to receive a report regarding the museum's development regarding Museums Development Southeast's access audit scheme.
So they ran a scheme that we could apply to take part in. It's a bit like the organisational health check scheme. They chose 6 museums in the southeast, and then we were one of them. So that worked out quite nicely because I was needed to do an access audit for the access plan. So someone came and did that before Christmas. We now have the audit. It's actually quite useful because she went through some other areas of the building as well, so it's quite useful for the Guildhall and generally, and signposting outside around the building as well. So that's been done and been used to create the access plan. And there's a small amount of funding available. I'm looking into if we can use that for things that are fairly easy to implement because of capacity. I would like to apply, but I'm wary of the timescales. So at the moment, one of the recommendations was an induction loop in the museum. So I'm exploring that. And then also the ramps at all the doorways in the museum are not really what they should be. So I've been exploring how if we can replace them. But it depends on the amount of money and the process, how long it takes me to gather the information and submit an application. So I've just put down there to prove and delegated how to apply it if I can manage to, basically.
Right. The recommendation is this is something that we can vote on now
Yes.
from this meeting. Okay then. So recommendations. Is there any comments before Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I think that it's brilliant that we've got this money and that we are making the museum more accessible, but I still just want to thump on about possibly, hopefully, getting some doors. I know it's a separate issue, but I really do think that we need doors that protect the volunteers. Because it's so cold in there. And, if I was setting priorities for grant applications, I think that's should be up at the top of the question.
Yeah, so there is a list of it. So it isn't within the forward plan as a sort of we would like to do this subject to funding action, and there is also a list, just a list of maintenance things that I highlighted, including that is sort of that you will see when you see the forward plan, but it's just noting you know, these are things that we'd like to do, but we don't know when, because it's funding dependent and things like that. In relation to the door, I did have a brief conversation with the property manager about it, and I did have a look at a few companies that do that sort of work. But again, it is not completely within my remit, I would say now, and I don't have the capacity to do that currently. The accreditation process has to take priority. But yeah, I agree with you. I would like that to change before next winter, but it, I think, relies on a few different things, basically.
Councillor Whitfield?
Just following on from that, and I know I bang on about this all the time as well, to me a very important thing in terms of the museum is signage. That's something that the museum lacks. People don't know where the museum is, and we might think that's ridiculous, but I've had, when I was volunteering in the museum, the number of people that came and said, who lived in town, and said, we didn't know this existed. It's quite scary, actually. And if we just had a big enough flipping sign outside, you know, a banner or something permanently out there, that would solve the problem immediately.
The wings that, like the feather signs that we have, would that be an option as a short term?
I've had a look at costs of those. So it is, again, that's in the plans, and it has been since last year. Again, it's things are being delayed because of getting this. If we don't pass accreditation, that is it's a much bigger issue, unfortunately, than not having sign outside. And if we were, if we wanted, because I would like something that is that's high up, because it's seeing past the market as well, to the entrance. But then we run into talking to DDC about if we're allowed to do that, and any issues with the heritage of the building. There's quite a few little factors to sort of discuss with people.
Could we set that in motion somehow though, getting in contact with BBC, seeing what they're...
I think I did previously.
Because otherwise we're just talking about it all the time, we never go further forward. I mean, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have a look and let me check, because I sent an email to someone, and I'll double check if it was specific to this. It was about the building, and we can see where I'll have a look and see, and then I can send another email.
Can I propose, not for a voting, but if it's an email that you forward to Councillor Ripley, with the potential for Councillor Ripley, because obviously if you're looking at the other particular elements of the museum, we don't want to distract from that, but equally.
No, but if I could do it, as a side issue, get to save me having to place it up, and she's very busy, obviously, doing all these other things, and I'm happy to do that.
I think, if we can get the agreement that we need, or work out what those areas, then when we are in the right position to think of what it would look like design wise, we probably will be there once, if that makes sense, those times will line up hopefully.
Talk about it on Friday.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments on that? Because the recommendations which we're about to vote on, and there are two here. The committee is asked to receive and note the report regarding the museum's accessibility audit, which is we'll go straight into that. And I have somebody to propose that. That's Councillor Ripley, and second is Councillor Fortescue. To vote on this, that is passed, it's unanimous. And the second on the committee is asked to approve delegated power for the museum manager to apply for funding in relation to the recommendations on the access audit, if appropriate. Can Chair propose?
You can.
I'm going to propose this one. Yes. There we go. So can somebody second, councillor Murphy seconded? Can we vote on this?
Not childish at all.
If only STC meeting.
Right, if we can move on to the next one, which is Museums at Risk Grant. Members to receive a report regarding the museum's development. I'll just start again. Members to receive a report regarding the Museums Development Southeast Museums at Risk Grant. Over to you, Millie.
So this is
Voices keeping up.
basically a breakdown. So it was approved that I could explore this possibility and apply for funding if it was available. And I knew this grant was available. I wasn't sure if we were eligible at the time, but we were for this project. So we have been told that we will receive the funding, so that we should be receiving it very soon. And we are, so I've been working and talking to Cloud IT about the systems that we would have. So the server also, I don't know if it was before or after the meeting, but the actual server that supports the CMS seemed to have died completely just before I submitted this application. So we will have a device that will act as a server. It's not a proper server, but it's basically a high functioning computer that will act as a server for the CMS.
Sorry, can I just ask what CMS?
Sorry, collections
Management system.
It's the database that the collection is in. And then, so the collection store has the old computers in it from the attic. Partly because when it was ready, we needed somewhere to work, so we just moved them there. But the plan was always to have laptops or something that could be removed from that room, used elsewhere if we need to. They're not kind of always plugged in and things like that. So we also had a spare laptop from the museum, which was sort of the museum assistant laptop, which is when we have students and people, they use that. That had died as well. So we replaced the 2 computers that are in the collection store with laptops, plus another 2 laptops, so 4 in total. They will have the right, so the current computers don't have the right kind of system on the SharePoint and things like that. So these will all have the right accounts and things properly connected to each other. And then also are able to update the desktop computer in the museum to a newer version as well. The screens, keyboards and mice, where possible, will be repurposed. We'll still keep those. And I think that's everything. So there will be some monthly costs. Actually, this is quite useful because since we've transferred to Cloud IT, the museum, I don't believe, has paid its share of IT support to the council. But now actually having a breakdown of how they manage the devices and things like that will help us calculate that a lot better, which is quite useful. And like I said, they'll be connected together. So the idea is the museum's SharePoint, the volunteers' computer, the laptops and the front desk computer will all be connected to the SharePoint with different permissions for different folders. It's really good. It means that if the volunteers save the visitor figure spreadsheet, for example, I can just access that. At the moment, there's a lot of physically going to the computer, getting things off of it, the same with the collection, and it's quite risky, and that's where we lose data. So that's the project, and we're just waiting for the money, and then we'll get started.
Brilliant.
And any comments on this? Can we have?
Good news.
Yes, it is. Yes. Can we have somebody to propose? I'll propose it. Thanks. And Councillor Anderson is seconding. If we can vote on that. pass unanimously.
Brilliant.
Right. And date and time, number 15, date and time of the next meeting, Friday the 7th of March, 2025 at 6:30.
Can I just,
Yes.
as an addition, mention and thank
Oh,
Louis for an incredible amount of work.
yes, I'm in awe.
Yeah,
Yes.
brilliant.
Thank you. So meeting closed.
Meeting closed, thank you.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.